In this tutorial, we're going to have a look at some of Photoshop's image manipulation facilities. So the first thing we're going to look at is the mask panel. And you can use the mask for a number of different features or applications. But the one that we're going to look at right now is if you wanted to create sort of a collage effect, where you wanted to combine two images together and have them blend into each other. You could use the mask tool to blend one image into the other. Okay, so what we've got here is an image of a macro close-up shot on a leaf, and in our second tab we've got a macro close-up shot of some machinery here, or metallic surface. So we're going to just copy one, the metallic one, and paste it into the leaf scene here, and I'm just going to resize it a little bit and reposition like that. So it takes up roughly half the size of the screen. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is create a layer mask above our metallic image. So if I go to I can close my layer comps here. If I go to the bottom of my layers panel and just click on the icon for add layer mask, what's going to happen is we'll see this small white square appearing to the right of the preview of the image on our layer, which is the metallic surface layer. This white box is the mask. So the way it basically works, if you think of a mask that you might wear on your face, normally you cover your face with a mask and you can see through certain parts of it. So like the eye holes, or the mouth holes, or the nose holes, and so on. A mask in Photoshop is very much the same idea. If this box is completely white, it means that there is no mask there. It's completely transparent. There's no mask. You can see everything that's on that layer. However, if you start painting or adding any black to this layer, so I'm just going to start painting with a black paintbrush. Anything that's painted black disappears. In other words, you can't see through it. So there's a mask in front of that part. And the added bonus, or the extra effect in Photoshop, is that if there's something behind that layer, you can actually see through, right through to the layer underneath. Okay, so I'm just going to delete what I've done there. And the effect that we're looking at here is a blending effect. So you can start painting with your paintbrush tool like I'm doing here. But if you want to actually get a nice seamless blend between two images, the quickest and best way to do it is using the gradient tool on a mask layer. So select your gradient tool, make sure that you've got the foreground to background color selected, so it's going from black to white, and then you can just click and drag over part of your image that you want to blend into the image underneath, and you can obviously increase or decrease the amount of blend depending on what image you're working with, but this is basically the kind of effect we're talking about here. So you get a blend from transparency, so you've got this strange looking effect now where it's going from this metallic surface blending seamlessly into this organic surface of the macro close-up on the leaf. And you can use this effect over and over again if you want to create collages or blend various elements together. You can also use the mask layer, obviously, to cut out certain elements of an image. So just to demonstrate that, if I wanted to cut out a segment of this leaf image, I could just zoom in on the bit that I want and use whatever selection tool I want. So I'm going to use the polygon selection tool just for the sake of easiness here, and I'm just going to select a quick selection of one of these patterns here on the leaf. Okay, so I've got a selection. If I now add a layer mask to my layer, what's going to happen is going to cut out that particular piece, and if you look in the preview, Everything else has turned black except for the bit that I can see. So it's like, as I said, the mask is now the black part, and the white part is what I can see through the mask. Okay. So the next thing we're going to look at is adjustment layers. I'm just going to delete the mask that we have on here. Okay, delete that, and I'm going to delete the, well, I'll leave that there for the moment. Um, and we'll just select the metallic surface layer and zoom out a little so we can see. At the moment, it's not really blending that well because of the disparity between the two colors. We've got this gray going to green, and it just seems a little odd. We could just try stretching it out a bit like this to make it seem more in proportion, and that improves the image a little bit, but again, it's still not perfect. It's not exactly what we're looking for. The colors are the main problem. So what we can use there is the adjustment panel. So if we go to Window, Adjustments, we get this flyout menu from here, and we can use the brightness contrast controls, adjust the levels, the curves, exposure. We can change the hue and saturation, the vibrance, color balance, black and white, photo filter, and so on. What we're going to do is use the hue and saturation adjustment. So if I click on this, it's going to add an adjustment layer above the layer that I've selected. Okay, so now I'm just going to change the hue to see what happens. And as you can see, it's actually changing the hue of everything underneath it, which is okay. We'll work with that for the moment. The actual color of the metallic surface isn't changing that much because it's already kind of a sepia color tone. But we can desaturate, which is that will give us a more even tone here. So if we just set the lightness to 0, put everything back to the defaults for a second, and just desaturate that green to sort of black and white effect like that. And now we can see when we do that, we've got a desaturated tone, just black and white and gray. And we now have a much more seamless image than we started with. The green, now black and white and gray, is blending almost perfectly into that image for us. You can also use any of the other adjustment layers, obviously, to increase or decrease the contrast of your images. So I'm going to increase the contrast all the way and decrease the brightness a little bit. And again, we're getting a very interesting pattern here now, blending into each other. Like that. Okay. And the last thing we're just going to look at here, so we've looked at masks, we've looked at adjustment layers. The final thing we're going to look at is what's called filters and layer styles. So there's two things, filters and layer styles in Photoshop, both of which you can use to adjust and change and manipulate the images you're working with. Okay, so we'll look at filters first of all. And if we go to the filter menu at the top of our screen, there's a drop down menu here. We've got a list of all the filters that you can apply to your images. So we're currently on the metallic surface layer. If we click on artistic and say colored pencil, we'll just see what happens. Okay, it's going to give us a preview of what this would look like. It's not great, but you know, it's probably not what we're looking for. Let's click on the next one, cutout. Okay, dry brush, neon glow, fresco, film grain. Let's click on film grain to see what happens when we select that. Okay, so we get an interesting effect. Let's just undo that for a second. Yeah, that's quite an interesting effect. Let's select our leaf layer just to add an effect to that as well. And if we go to filter, say blur, let's actually go with distort, and we'll go with spherize. Okay, so we've got lots of options here. We can increase or decrease the amount of spherization. Okay, let's try another one. Filter, artistic, underpainting. Okay, And you can access all of the filters from here and get different effects. Let's try that ink outlines, looks quite interesting. Yes, now that's a very nice effect we're getting there, compared in comparison to the original image. Okay, and the final thing we'll look at is what's called layer styles. You can access these from this FX icon here, which is non-destructive, or you can go to the layer panel and go layer style, and access your drop shadows, inner shadows, outer glows, and so on. So we're just going to have a quick look at some of these. If I add, um, say, just a circular shape onto the middle of the stage here, and just color it in white with my gradient tool like that, that's quite interesting shape. Um, and let's just step back a couple of steps here. So we'll press Command Shift. Okay, we'll just put this on a new layer like this. Okay, interesting shape. And we're going to just add some effects here, like a drop shadow, to see what this looks like. We'll just move the box out of the way. And if I increase the distance and the size on my drop shadow, you can see the immediate preview here gives us a demonstration. You can put inner shadows on your images as well. You can put outer glows to make it look like it's glowing, inner glows as well. You really wouldn't want to put all of these on at the same time, but I'm just demonstrating the kind of effects you can get. Bevels and emboss, satin overlay, color overlay, gradient overlay, pattern overlay. Quite interesting. And also a stroke. If you want to put an outline around your image, you can do that and increase or decrease the amount of size on that. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK. And we end up, now we've looked at masks, we've looked at adjustment layers, we've looked at layer styles, and we've looked at filters in Photoshop, just to see how you can manipulate different types of imagery in Photoshop CS5.1.